Okay, hello again, and welcome to Women of Words online reading. This event is part of our current exhibit called Verbal Visual at the Palmer Public Library. The show is up through October 30th. Nancy Marr will share more about the group.
Sure, thank you. Our group, Women of Words, is 6 visual artists, all members of Gallery A3, working in various media, painting, encaustics, assemblage and mixed media, collage, and photography. We have been meeting monthly since 2019 to share our writing and to collaborate on exhibits that involve visual images and the written word. We have collaborated on previous group projects such as online readings, exhibits, and the creation of a 12-panel accordion book. And we continue to work individually, each of us seeking ways in which our visual art enriches and reflects on our writing. Our current exhibit is at Palmer Public Library through the end of October. Passing it back to Marianne.
Okay. Tonight we'll share both images and words, beginning with readings from our members. And I think that we're going to begin the readings with Nancy, and Nancy will be sharing selections from her new chapbook, Morning After Several Days of Rain.
Okay, this was called Airborne. Racing pell-mell into the kitchen and through the kitchen glass storm door, it became apparent to me as I watched our mother lift the willow basket of warm laundry onto the kitchen table that this younger sister of mine would make it a habit to raise her antenna high for the sharp edges in life. She'd find the highest ski jumps, crash bikes over homemade ramps with the neighborhood boys at night. Even the dog knew to jump up on cue as she sped by, mother forever scraping up the shards and emptying glass slivers into the trash. Love. We spread crusty towels onto the sand, cracked open 2 colas and the puffy bag of triangular-shaped chips. She muscled through the yellow-capped mild salsa. I handed her a paper plate. Storm clouds swooped in like noisy gulls. We carried everything up to the empty phone booth, sliding open the folding glass door with a screech. How we laughed, dipping the chips into the messy red sauce, swinging back the frosty elixirs like sailors. The wind and rain pelted the windows sideways. We wrapped our arms around each other, my sister and I, relishing her day pass. This last one is Conversations with a Shark. On the beach in early morning, the waves arrive to my left, and all along the place where the sand meets the sea, there's a drop-off, a gouging out of yesterday's space. These waves are sirens, tigers at the zoo that hypnotize with furrowed brows. They want to know, if you are so afraid of us, then why are you so close? Nervous seals make eye contact in the rough undertow. They'd love you to wrap them in your arms in a warm towel and carry them home. What are your hopes and dreams? They'd ask politely from the back seat of your car. Years ago, lifeguards with zinc-painted noses checked their tan lines, blew whistled, and yelled through heavy megaphones, "Too far!" And this always felt to me like more of a compliment than an admonition. Today, the lifeguard with French manicured nails cautions me to stay within the white foamy area, and I follow her glossy-tipped fingers to the shoreline where the green water turns to white. A large shark is posing on the billboard behind her. I can smell the fresh wood of the 2x4s recently hammered into the sand. I tread upon the footprints of those who ventured out before me with their large dogs and lift my eyes to the top of the mustard cliff on my right. I count 5 seagulls who've caught the wind. We brought our boys here when they were in diapers. Years ago, our 3 grandsons visited the Outer Cape with us, and 1 in 3 wore diapers too. Persistent and rhythmic, the pounding waves interrupt my thoughts, and like a school teacher with weeks until summer vacation, I turn with an insincere patience, giving them my undivided attention. What are we hoping for when we stare out to sea, when we move along the empty beach searching for something shiny or some ancient chip of a porcelain plate to set into a mosaic, attempting to hold history in place? In a dream that night, the billboard shark calls out to me. He's standing just beyond the white foamy area. Filling your car with seals was an act of kindness, he says. There is goodness in you. I smiled. I even almost laughed, settling myself onto the edge of the sandy drop-off, my bare feet dangling in yesterday's space. Thank you. And I'll pass it over to Janet.
In the early days of our group, we had some themes. One of them was love, and we also talked about family members. So, and they also were trying to be 100 words. So the 4 that I'm going to read are very short, and they fit into that category. Papa Mendel was a sweet, gentle man, a gifted tailor of men's suits. He loved opera and became a clapper when he first landed in New York City. Free admission for starting the audience clapping. He called me a schöne Mädel, a beautiful girl in Yiddish. He liked to brush my hair slowly and gently 100 times while I sat mesmerized. I would watch him press the wool. Papa made winter coats for my sisters and me. We would get fitting when we came to visit in the summer. I would watch him press the wool by taking a mouthful of water, then spraying it out to create a mist of steam on the fabric. He was a consummate tailor. Excuse me. This one is called Love. Holding this tiny compact bundle, I bury my face into the distinct smell of baby, the skin as soft as a falling blossom. 2 weeks old on a hot summer day, he lies on his side in a loose onesie, room for growth, a delicate, soft cocoon, gathering energy through sleep after nursing. Excuse me. 3 months, and those eyes twinkle as he looks at me. A sweet smile, arms and feet wave in the air. Can't wait to get going with life. Later, crawling fast, stopping at my feet. His arms go up, and with his eyes and a grin, asks to pick me up. I melt. And this one is called Hot. Hot was one of our grandson's first words at 14 months, as he watched mesmerized by flames. Dancing in the wood stove. He moved towards the orange flames, left hand stretched out. Hot, hot, any adult nearby would say. Soon, on return visits, he'd gravitate towards the stove hand out and say, hot, hot, always an adult nearby confirming he was right. Now, almost summer, at 21 months, visits are only outside with COVID-19 in the air. He pulled on the outside door, wanting to enter, and he hesitated, not knowing the word stove. Arms stretched out, he said, hot. Okay, we're going back in time a bit. So this is about our 3 children when they were younger. It's called Rio Grande. From within Bandelier National Park, New Mexico, our family started our hike down to the bottom of the canyon where the Rio Grande runs. As we reached the arid bottom, the path turned toward the river. We were startled. The Grand Rio Grande was just a wide ribbon of butterscotch-colored liquid. The boys found the wet bank was a thick ochre clay mud, which they started to smear all over themselves, laughing and encouraging their demure 13-year-old sister to join in. Cautiously, she smeared some around her calves, then her thighs. Finally, smiling up to her neck, just like her brothers. Thank you.
And we're moving on to Sue, fresh arrival.
Okay. I'm reading 2. The first one is a prelude to the second, and it's much longer, this first one. It's prelude, summer vacation. Teaching in college gave me free summers, but none of my girlfriends wanted to go to Europe that summer. So I flew from JFK to Athens, and a couple of days later to Rhodes, and then about an hour on a rented Vespa to Lindos. At the end of the next day, I met the American captain of a yacht on the beach. We arranged to meet a week later in Corfu. A night or 2 later, a German guy and I scootered out to a small town and drank with a few old Greek men. This German guy asked to drive back to Lindos. I should not have agreed. I knew the road and he did not. But he said, "Me, Superman." He didn't quite make the right turn onto the bridge. So over the bridge, into the olive orchard below, we flew. Superman dislocated his left shoulder. I broke my left collarbone and ankle. The old Greek men followed us, knowing we drank too much, and rescued us, taking us back to Lindos. I went to bed, and the next morning, the German guy's friend drove us to the hospital in Rhodes. The doctor wrapped my left upper torso shoulder in white gauze and plaster. He told me to go back to the States for my ankle. So off I flew back to Athens, overnight in a 5-floor walk-up, then a flight back to JFK, and then Ohio, where my mom took me at midnight to the hospital for my ankle. After 10 days at home, I met a friend in New York City to drive up to Martha's Vineyard, where I could swim with a plastic bag over my left foot. Then back to New York City, where I met this guy at a friend's pottery studio on a Wednesday night. That Sunday, we went to a Bear Mountain picnic together. We stayed together for the next 42 plus years, had 2 children. Michael died a few years ago. I now have 3 grandchildren.
Really nice.
So now this is the 100-word love story called Love at First Sight. I didn't believe in love at first sight, but I met Michael on a Wednesday night at a friend's pottery studio. He called later to ask for a ride to Bear Mountain Sunday picnic. We were together from then on. He asked me to marry him 3 weeks later. I said yes, and in a few more weeks, I was pregnant. Then we got married, bought a house in Coleraine, and moved with our 3-month-old daughter. In 4 years, we had our son. Best thing I ever did. Trust in our love at first sight.
Interesting.
Somebody's mic is on.
I think we're moving on to Laura. So, are you finished, Sue?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Laura.
Laura and I are reading.
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Is this Shelley and I reading together?
Yes,
Or
we're reading together. Well,
okay,
I
that's
just-
not
don't know.
all right. So this is it's different from the order that we had worked out, but we can do it.
Yeah.
This is something that Shelley and I are going to read together, something that we wrote together on email, basically by ping-ponging back and forth. We did commit to responding to each other's lines within a week so that our interest in what we were doing would not wither on the vine. And we thought it might be interesting to not end each of our lines with a final word and a period, but we would end our 2 lines with an enticing dangle that the other person would pick up and then weave into their responding 2 lines. So the poem is called The Earth Quakes Unaware. The earth falls out from under my feet for only a moment, as nothing shatters, but everything shivers like
The man who holds his dead daughter's hand amongst the rubble on my computer screen in his bright orange jacket. He sits like
a jolt of color, surrounded by mounds of pulverized cement, trying to spark life into limp fingers and reclaim his child from
the dark. But here, today, starts with a light-filled morning. The land speaks effervescent green, a hopeful day for
all of us whose lives have not been torn apart by open wounds in our world, but another hopeless day for those whose worlds
have no world that is remembered. Long lines of donkey carts, mattresses piled on wagons, worn shoes beating the dust for direction to a roof. They are a speck of
life moving on and on in a precariously interwoven flow as the ground shifts again and again under their feet.
the end.
Yes.
Thank you. Laura, did you have something to read in addition
I
to that?
did.
For the prompts? Okay, go. Yeah, thanks.
One of the things that we worked on as a group was experimenting with the format of an ode. So the first thing that I'm going to read is a 3-part ode to rain. And the first part is Rain on the Roof. I'm a young girl sleeping in my room directly under the eaves. The rain drums down soft and steady. I'm happy to be in my own room, away from my brothers. I love them, of course, but I'm the oldest child and the only girl among 2 brothers, plus 5 more bustling boy cousins. And I'm glad to have space apart from their toys and trucks, their constant noise, their tumbling body. As I listen to rain falling on the roof, I feel warm, dry, snug, and safe inside the house, apart from, but still a part of, my sleeping family. And just a side note to my brother, I don't really mean that. I was always happy to be with you.
Yeah.
Uh, the second part is Hailstorm in August. I'm a young woman camping in Maine. I have decent gear, a good amount of experience, and all the confidence of youth. So while I'm not happy to hear hail spatter on the tent, I'm not too worried either. I chose the tent site carefully, and I trenched it well. Quick check. My hiking boots are stowed safe inside. Fortunately, I'd added a layer of waterproofing to the tent earlier in the summer, and both my ground cloth and sleeping bag have been reliable good buddies on previous trips. Hailstorm in August, I marvel. Then I push deeper into my sleeping bag, feeling, I've got this, as I fall back asleep. And the third part, you can tell the direction we're moving in, thunderstorm. I'm an older woman now, sleeping in a house that was built 125 years ago and patched together ever since. I go to sleep with severe thunderstorm warnings on my phone. I wake up to crackles of thunder that seem as if they're inside my room. The rain falls in sheets and the wind bends the trees. As the storm rages, I worry. Will a tree crash through the roof? Will a branch smash through a closet? Will the sump pump fail while the basement floods? Will the gutters burst? My old house is not a haven in this storm, but instead offers an open door for possible disaster. So for my second piece, I'm going to shift from possible disaster to the minor mystery of whatever happens to the sock that goes missing in the laundry. Where did my sock go? One of my favorite socks is missing. I put 2 pink-toed, yellow-striped socks into the washing machine, but only one emerged. Where's the other? It's far too colorful to languish unnoticed among all the dish towels and pillowcases. Maybe you've heard some urban legends about lost socks. You know, strange but credible accounts from the friend of a friend of a friend, or from your sister's hairdresser's cousin. One such story leans towards capitalist folklore. A mini monster inside the washing machine devours a sock in exchange for each load of laundry. Another hypothesis turns to science fiction. Stray socks spin off to outer space. What's your theory? In the telescope of your imagination, can you see my yellow striped sock cycling around and around the rings of Saturn? Well, back on Earth, grounded and practical, I can suggest that a reliable way to encourage a lost sock to come limping home is to throw away its stay-at-home mate. Somehow, someday, that lures the wandering sock back to begin a new life of unintended solitude.
Nice, really nice.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
And I
And
think,
we're on to Mary Ann.
okay. I'm going to read the piece that I have at the exhibit. I have a part of a story, a piece of a story on the wall at the exhibit, and it echoes some of the images that I work with. Mostly Daphne, the mythological figure of Daphne, and winged figures. So also I wanted to say I write under the name Marianne Zenos. So this is excerpt from The Change by Marianne Zenos. Winter, 1803 in Greece during the Ottoman invasion. In the long ago days, before the sky gods came to Greece, before Ottomans, Christians, or even the Olympians lived in these mountains, people shifted and changed, swam and flew, becoming winged creatures or serpents, cyclones or humble insects. We leapt from the stones with calloused bare feet, lifted arms to the sky, and flew. In those days, we drew power from the rocks, the mountains, the rivers, and the sky. The sky called us upward towards freedom. Magic called to life, life's longing for itself. And as death approached the Suli Valley, Thea Nikolitsa hoped the power of life would call to the women of her village. Over centuries, as the world changed and became more fixed, few recalled the old magic, but most lost the power of transformation. Those who still practiced the power of change, including Nikolitsa's ancestors, came to the rugged valley to live in peace. But over time, even in Suli, it was no longer safe to flaunt the old ways, to be a mixture of flesh, feathers, scales, or fins. Soon the adults became rock-bound, and they bound their children to the earth. Only magisas, witches like Nikolitsa, remembered the secret of flight, and they learned to keep their differences a secret. By the time Nikolitsa gained her feathers, only a few old women kept the knowledge alive. Stories exist older than the stone churches and older than the stone temples before them of people shifting shape. Daphne, calling on the power of the river to become a tree and escape the Olympian god who would rape her. Daphne changed, becoming a laurel tree, but had never learned the magic of return. She was trapped. The forest might be full of women escaping violence, silently encased in bark, rooted and silent. As war and violence rapidly approached, Nikolitsa wanted the women of her village to escape, to fly high above the muted, bark-bound trees. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're gonna move on to the artwork. And what we're gonna do, we have a keynote file, and we're gonna move through it in silence. We're just gonna show you every piece that's in the show. They're all captioned. I just have to make sure that my my file is lined up. Oh, and I need to, so many little details. So I'm just going to go through with a pause, and these are in, I believe these are in alphabetical order by the artist. And so here's my beginning with my piece, Daphne, and then moving on through. So I'll continue now. Laura Holland. Sue Katz. Nancy Marr. Rochelle Shikoff. Janet Winston. Thank you. That's our show. Um, the next part, I'm looking for, I'm going to change, sorry. We're going to talk about, we work with prompts every, every time we meet. Here it is. I found it. And I'm going to a different group of images, but I'll just first, before we go, what we do is a lot of people who are here, I know also work with prompts, like Nina Creaky Hoffman is here, and she's written a story cookbook where you can roll up elements for a story. And I've written a lot from that. I know there are some other people here, who've used tarot cards as prompts, or have used songs or music, or, using games as prompts. Something, I think, because we're visual artists, that we've gravitated towards visual prompts. And so I'm going to show you first this is a grid just of different prompts that we have used in the past. And Right. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to show, let me just make sure that I'm right about this. We're going to show the prompt and then I'm going to close the screen share. I have, this might get too complicated. And if it does, then we're just going to do the stories and say what the prompt is. But the first one is Laura. And the prompt was matches. And this is a book that Laura made from that prompt. Laura, do you want to say something about the book?
Well, it folds up into a square and unfolds into two parts, which reflect the two parts of the very short story. Again, this is working with, I think we've mentioned before that we sometimes aim for these 100-word stories. So the first part is I wanted it to have the really cool dark colors of a cold, dark morning. And then the second part is we get into lighting the fire using the matches. So it's warmer colors and lighter glow.
Okay, I'm going to stop the share. We'll hear the story.
Okay, well, the story, not surprisingly, is called Cold, Dark, Early Morning. It's cold, dark, early morning. My alarm clock beeps from deep frozen shadows. Time to wake up, it insists. Not even possibly, my body protests. Oh, well, maybe, concedes my brain, which is apparently more open to possibilities. I hurry downstairs to start a fire in the cast iron stove. Crumple paper, pile kindling, stack logs, then those matches. It's my small daily pleasure to use real wooden matches, so much more substantial and solid than the flimsy cardboard sticks. After the matches flare and kindling catches fire, I add the larger pieces of wood, and at last it's time for coffee. What a deep pocket of joy that moment is, savoring hot coffee in the cold, dark house as it slowly warms all around me.
Thank you.
Thank you. And
I think the next ones are mine. And the two prompts that we've all written on all of these prompts, but the two that I decided to bring tonight were the binoculars and the beaded purse. So I'm going to stop the share and I'm just going to read them. The binoculars. On the shore of Lake Mead, the two dogs flopped in the cool water, their tongues lolling out. Those dogs always seemed to smile, even in the July heat. My father was young then, only in his 50s, but cancer made him seem older. He never swam. He said he had a fear of drowning, being trapped under the surface, unable to breathe. But he smiled at the two dogs in the water. They have the right idea, he said, and handed me the binoculars. Then his voice was handed me the binoculars. I saw a hawk today. His voice was raspy and he coughed, then coughed some more. Take a look. Your eyes are better than mine. The sky stretched enormous, wide and blue. Hard to believe that it was the same sky I glimpsed in patches over my Boston apartment. Where should I even begin to look for the hawk? There, he said, pointing. Nicotine had stained his freckled Irish hands. I followed the line of his finger and saw the hawk. Redtail, I said. You were right. He's been coming around every day. I hope he doesn't want the dogs. We laughed. Soaking wet, the dogs weighed as much as I did. I offered the binoculars back to my dad. Soon I'd catch the bus back to Boston, and he, the dogs, and my stepmother would stay in Nevada for a while. He said the dry heat was good for his lungs. You keep them, my father said. Your eyes were better than mine. Okay, the beaded purse. Tasha stepped into her grandmother's bedroom while the grown-ups argued downstairs. Arguing again. Lately, when they argued, her mother cried, and Tasha was confused by the crying, confused that her father didn't stop yelling and take care of her. He always took care of Tasha when she cried. when she skinned her knee or had a nightmare. Tasha's grandmother wasn't in her room. She had just gone to the hospital that morning. Tasha missed her and loved her big bedroom, smelling of lavender and talcum powder. Sunlight shone through the Irish lace curtains. Tasha touched the fancy things on her grandmother's dresser, an ivory comb and a beaded purse. Knowing it was forbidden to snoop in her grandmother's room, she clicked the metal clasp of the purse and looked inside. She found a car key, a fancy paper with lots of numbers, and her father's old cigarette lighter. She also saw the pink rhinestone barrette she'd lost last week. Downstairs, her father yelled, "How could it just be gone? Don't you know how much it was worth?" Tasha dug down into the purse and found a diamond ring just like her mother's. Surrounded by blue stones, the star-like diamond seemed to wink at her. She didn't want to get into trouble. She never wanted her father to yell at her the way he yelled at her mother. So she looked at the photograph tucked on the side of the dresser's mirror, a snapshot of her grandmother holding Tasha as a baby, and silently asked her grandmother what to do. Her grandmother winked like the diamond, which wasn't much of an answer, but she knew her grandmother loved her, even if she snooped. Tasha brought the beaded purse downstairs to the living room.
That's great.
Marianne,
Yeah.
I just want to tell the audience that when the group does the prompts, we do 12 minutes.
Oh, right. Thank you.
That's the time we have to write these. So I thought that was important for the audience to know
Thank you
that
for
we
sharing.
have a time constraint on these, that we've self-imposed. It's okay. Self-imposed.
It's a good imposition.
It's
Right.
good.
Okay. Do you want me to continue with the images or should we just go with the reading? I just want to check in about that.
I would like to see the images.
You want to see the images? Okay. So
Yes.
Nancy is next.
Okay, I worked, excuse me, I worked off the prompt.
Oh,
the
actually,
short-
Nancy's not next.
Oh,
According to this,
on
Me.
my list, I'm.
Nancy's next. Here you go.
Okay, this is the prompt off flowers that Jan brought. And so here we go. It's called
Okay.
Mrs. Fiore's Flowers. And in Italian, Fiore is flowers. So Mrs. Fiore's Flowers. Attractive Mrs. Fiore, with her large plastic earrings, was sitting at our kitchen table when I arrived home from kindergarten on an unusually warm fall day. The outdoor sunlight had been brilliant. Inside, the room was dim, and my eyes took their time adjusting to the light. And when the room came into focus, here was attractive Mrs. Fiore, smiling radiantly, both hands pressed around a hot cup of tea, prepared by my mother, who had newborn twins napping in rattly wooden cribs just down the hall. It was her bared teeth that impressed me most. Framed by red lipstick that matched her red earrings, her red nails, and most important, the spiky red zinnias standing in a vase on the center of the table, separating my mother and the well-put-together gardener. Mrs. Fiore says that you picked flowers from her garden. My mother was gentle. I said you could pick some, Mrs. Fiore said, and she sat a little straighter in her chair. Then settling her teacup down and building on the crescendo in the second half of her sentence, but I never thought you'd pick that many. Days earlier, on hands and knees, and wearing a bandana that matched her gingham gloves, I had stopped, fascinated, to watch her engage in the rhythmic, meticulous weeding of her garden, a small folded towel under her knees. Our garden was different. Hot pink petunias from last year's garden had self-sown themselves along our walkway, which felt to me at 5 years old equally magical. You said I could pick as many as I liked. My chin was up. Her smile was wide. You may certainly pick some. She settled her cup again. Just please don't pick so many. I think it's best if she doesn't pick any at all. My mother looked tired. Afterwards, clearing the dishes, she said offhandedly, cut flowers are like spilt milk, water under a bridge. That's it.
Mm.
Thank you. We're moving on to Shelley.
Oh,
Doke, lights on again.
lights on here. Let's get the pictures.
Get the pictures.
Now, do you want these up while you're reading, or do you want to just take a look at them and then take them
Just
off?
take a look at them, audience, and memorize them.
Right. This is the music box, and this is the fork.
Okay.
Okay, I'll
I'll
stop.
start with the fork. Fork, humble yet necessary. Did the Tynes spear hearty roast beef at a U.S. Embassy state dinner where the fate of Gazans was determined over caviar and vodka? The lowly fork against a pointillist paper, 2 cup bottoms imprinted. Was it wine goblets, seltzer bottles, water glasses, traces left behind, just like the Gazans in Rafa? Okay. And the next one was that mechanism that belonged to a music box. I think it's the internal mechanism, actually. Silent music box, so I made up the music. Maybe Schubert, piano, Bach, piano, waltz, maybe, piano lessons, music theory, life stories of composers, fingers starting easy, music always. Besides the piano music lessons learned, there was learning, practicing, practice, patience, studying, counting, time. From lifting the notes into the air on a page to making sounds, some kind of magic. The end.
Thank you. And I think that our final reader is Jan.
Yep.
And hold on, I'm going to get your prompt for you. There you are. The
Thank you.
flip-flops.
The boardwalk at a glance. Summertime and a walk on the boardwalk display an endless parade of people, voices loud and soft, and walkers in the hot sun. In the crowds of folks around, people seem uninhibited in the amount or a minimum amount of clothes on their bodies. While underneath the boardwalk, the feet plop or swish and sand falls in your hair. But above, among all the myriads of footwears moving, picking up sticky paper trash or melting ice cream cones on their soles, what caught my eye was a new pair of lavender and white flip-flops, neatly arranged on the edge of the boardwalk. Where is the owner? A young girl about 6 skips ahead of her mother, notices the flip-flops, and tries to get them on her feet. Her mother, now arrived by the child, says, "Take them off and come along." The child drops the flip-flops haphazardly, and one is so close to the edge that when a man walks by, he doesn't see that his foot brushed it so slightly that it falls over the side, leaving the other one alone. All done.
Thank you. Hold on. The end.
Thank you, everybody. That's our reading. I'm now going to take everybody off of Spotlight so we can join everyone in the room. So I'll do this one at a time. And we want to open this for discussion or questions, comments. We're going to have trouble seeing everybody at once. So, if you want to consider using the, emoji hand, you can underneath the reactions key, you could do that, or put your hand up and we'll do our best to see you. Or you can put a question in the comment and we'll read it. Nina, do you want to say what your comment is?
I was just the red-winged blackbirds.
Mm-hmm.
I just wondered, they were wonderful. I mean, all the hands and the blackbirds. I just wondered about maybe there's something the artist could say about them. So that was great.
Thank you, Nina. I'm of two minds. When I'm working in the studio, it's very intuitive. So there's no meaning when I'm working. And then when I have to write an artist statement, I have to do the BS. So I'll give you, which one do you want? You want the person in the studio or you want the BS, Nina Hoffman? What do you want?
What about one of each?
One of each. Everybody says that when I say something. In the studio, there's a lot of information going on in my head, a lot of knowledge, a lot of skill, but I basically work with my intuition. I live in a rural area, so the red-winged blackbirds are in my backyard. They're very beautiful. When they come swooping into the feeders, they swoop and they whistle to tell you that they're there. So I love them. And they're very big and they're very aggressive. And, I love all of that. The BS part is when I have to say that they're playful and they represent freedom and all of that. You get the picture. And everybody on the screen that knows me knows I feel that way about writing artist statements. I do it because I apply to a lot of things, but it's not really where I live. Where I live is the first part. Thank you.
I wanted to follow up on something I heard in Nina's question, which was about the
Yeah.
hand. The hands
hand.
are incredibly expressive,
Right.
and they're quite skillful.
Yes.
I wanted you to say something about the expression of the hands in those paintings.
Well, when I'm in the studio, the part that relates to the audience or the public or the community is that I do it for the picture, but I'm also doing it. How can I get the viewer look? That's one of my questions in the studio. How can I get you as the viewer to look at my work? Because that's what I want. I want you to look at it sounds obvious, but it's not really. When you're in the studio, you're working. But I want that the people, so I engage you by doing expressive hands. People can relate to that. It's a direct correlation to your experience. So I think I got it. I think I got it after all of these years. I didn't draw. I was very insecure about drawing when I was a youngster. So I just took courses and I drew and hands and feet and heads. And that's part of the secret. Just keep practicing. From the piano lessons, I learned that. Just keep practicing and working. It's my motto. Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Marianne.
I'm going to answer one question that was brought to me privately, which is the work that you saw for sale? And I'm going to say that most of the work is actually for sale. I think all but a couple of pieces. And
Yeah.
I put a link in the I put a link, we're going to mention that again before we end, but I put a link in the chat where you can go to the website. The prices are listed. There's a contact form. And if you know, the best way to support the arts is to support living artists directly. So I just want to encourage that. And so just go to our website. When you hit that, when you go to the contact page, where do you think the contact page goes? It goes to me, and that's all right. I'll send you along to whatever artist that you want to talk to. So there's also information about everybody's websites, how you can see everybody else's work, other work people have done. You know, Shelley, for instance, is a muralist. You can get to see some of her incredible murals. Everybody here has done we've been a member of the same cooperative for, I think Nancy's the youngest member, but I've been a member for 22 years. Some of us have been for 10 years. So we're in an art cooperative in Amherst. Could somebody
Yeah.
ask a question so I don't have to go look at the chat? Simone.
Yes, I just wondered kind of what the scale was, and if you presented these things like the prompts and the poems with all of the work, or is the work in the library just the visual art?
You want me to answer that? I can answer that. It's only the visual art. We didn't bring the prompts in. I think that each of us somehow related the work to our writing in some way. But some people, for instance, Sue does not have like a statement because the words are incorporated right into her pieces. Nancy has an entire book of poetry hanging next to her painting. So that's pretty, you know, I have that story that I read you, which is a piece of a story. Shelley has a statement that, you know, so everybody, but the prompts really was, is the work we do more privately as a group. And it didn't really come into the show in Palmer. Maybe it'll come into a future show.
Yeah, I would just wanted to compliment you all on how you organized this presentation between the art and the readings, and then moving to the prompts and carrying on with your creative voices. So thank you.
Thank you, Simone.
Simone is somebody who I've written many prompt story starts with. So
You know, I found, I'll just segue off the prompts. I don't identify as a writer. I'm a visual artist, but I find that the writing ends up in a place that I never imagined. And so does my visual arts. It ends up in a place I never could have ever imagined. I mean, I work on a series, it could be 4 years, 2 years, or 1 year. So I find those two art forms linked in that way inside of me. Not necessarily when I'm working, but just for this discussion. I find that similarity.
would somebody else, any other of the writers, anybody presenting tonight want to address that a little, maybe that question about writing and visual art and what the balance is for you? Were you more lean? Because I know a few of you are lean much more towards being strictly visual art.
I always, oh, go ahead, Jen.
Where you had your hand up too?
No,
You
I
can
think
go first and then I'll go.
I was just saying, I'm so glad that Shelley started this group about 6 or 7 years ago. And I've always written just on my own. I love to write. And so now it was like every 3 weeks we get together and prepare something. And I always used to feel like, oh, should I write? Should I paint? Which am I? But they really are, they've joined together, and I don't make them fight for attention anymore. It's just, it's just a real flow. And this group has made that happen. The prompts are really fun. You know, that's a real fun part for me, as were the 100-word poems years ago. We started with those.
Mhm.
It's funny. It'd be fun to do one prompt, like one fork, and all 6 people, how they related to the music box. I did a carnival story. Yeah, it's the prompts are fun. Probably like that cookbook someone did.
Nina's got the
Yeah.
cook.
Well, I'm basically a visual artist, and I never considered myself very good at writing. So I thought, well, this is an opportunity to try something a little different for me. And so it has been very helpful in getting me to basically trim things down. We had to do 100-word stories. It is incredibly difficult to cut out all kinds of things that you feel are absolutely essential in the little story you've written, and find that it's just so much easier to see through and read it if it is cut down to 100 words. So that has been a real interesting direction for me to work into writing. And actually, the work I had in the show is mostly landscapes and butterflies, and I have spent a lot of time with insects and butterflies and moths and flowers and things like that, although I do a lot of very abstract work, I guess based somewhat on landscapes. So in the exhibit at the library, I have 3 stories, none of which I read tonight. And they all are about the colors in the landscape, different seasons. And I wrote stories about the landscape. So they weren't done one for the other. They just happened to come out. A lot of the things that I wrote about that weren't prompts were the colors all around me. And I use a lot of different colors in my artwork. So it has gone sort of hand in hand, but not actually related to each other. It's just things that are coming out of me that are in natural life, nature, and colors.
Ann Burton asks a question in the chat. Have you ever considered making a visual piece from a prompt? That's an interesting question. I mean, I have never. Has anybody? Or should we now?
Do a prompt or a visual?
Do a
Yeah,
make
that's-
visual work from a prompt?
I think that'd be fun.
I think it'd be super fun.
Yeah, with writing, maybe.
That's a good idea, Anne. Thank you. Paula, do you have your hand up?
Yes, first I want to say that was thoroughly enjoyable hearing you all read. Yeah, I loved that. I loved your stories and what I learned about you and whatnot. Anyway, I'm thinking about Nancy's story with Mrs. Fiore and her red lipstick and her red earrings and the red zinnias. And I just pictured you as a 5-year-old noticing color.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to ask you, I know that's the adult you writing about when you were 5, but do you remember having an awareness of color like that? When you were,
I do. I mean,
Yeah.
sure, the flowers interested me. I was cutting through a friend's yard, then through Mrs. Fiore's yard to get home. And it's just this vivid red. And then there she was with this lipstick on, which was my mother had that Chanel No. 5 lipstick too, but she had just had twins, and this this woman just was so packaged all the time. And I was even going to add her tiny waist in there. My mother was just like, oh, come on, Mrs. Fiore, get over it. But she entertained her. And so it became like a stage for Mrs. Fiore and a chance for her to sort of speak of what she was about, and what she was about was how she presented herself in her flowers, her garden to the world. And, you know, I looked her up, she lived to be 94. But I do see color. I see it all the time. As a kid, I think I did too. And I used to love the color mint green. And I always wonder, like, how each of us is attracted to a color early in life. And then, like, maybe for many people, that's their color. But it's always been like that verdigris, Statue of Liberty green, this mint green. Yeah. But yeah, I bet you do too. Anyway, yeah, thank you.
I do. I used to play
Yeah.
with those, you know, the colors strips you get for paint, for
Oh,
wall
right.
paint.
Yes,
I used to love to play with those and just
yes, you bring them home and then what do you do?
whatever. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. Marianne, I hadn't read your little story in Palmer, and I just, the way you write before the Ottoman invasion, I mean, you just always pull history in it, and I love that. People shape shifting. It's just and then the tree that is in the Palmer exhibit with the woman, that her body is a tree. It's such a wonderful image for protection, because the bark, you know, protects the inner tree. So it's a wonderful place to not hide, but reshape yourself. Trees, you know, are so strong. Yeah. But I wrote all these words and I can't even read them. Humble instincts, yeah. Calloused bare feet, yeah, really beautiful. Pushing off rocks, and the Suli Valley, the old magic. A lot of times your stories have like ancient beginnings, and I just love that.
They do.
Shifting across time, yeah, really nice.
Not to take this attention off myself for a minute, but it's about 8:18 and I wanted to stop the video about 18 minutes ago because we've been recording. And so what I usually like to do is end it, say thank you, end it, and then everybody's welcome to stay and talk some more or ask some more questions. But I like to end the video so that it's not such a big, bulky boulder, you know, of a data file. So I'm going to ask Laura to read our closing, and then I'll stop the recording, and everyone is really welcome to stay as long as you like. Laura?
Laura's on mute, Marianne.
Yeah, she's coming off.
I'm
Oh.
unmuted now.
Okay.
Okay, so first of all, thank all of you for coming. But in closing, we really want to thank the Palmer Public Library for hosting the exhibit, and the wonderful staff of the Palmer Public Library for helping us set up the show. Also, special thanks to Tracy Marion and to the members of Gallery A3, which is our aesthetic home away from home. The show, Visual Verbal, runs through the end of October. So the library basically gave us an extra month. We were scheduled to close the end of September, but we have the whole month of October as well. And the show will be up until October 30th. On our website, which exists thanks to Marianne, you can find more information about the artists and links to even more information about the artists. I'd also like to remind you of something that Marianne mentioned earlier, which is that most of the works in the exhibit are for sale, and the prices are included on the image page of the website. And to find out more, you can contact the artist or use the contact form on the website. So, and let me just close with once again, thanking you all for joining us tonight. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.